Hi, I'm John.
I'm Hunter.
And you're here with Panic at the Library. This is Why We're Not Detectives, a Garcia Library podcast with the Corpus Christi Public Libraries. And we will be discussing the book Cain's Jawbone. Hunter, what is Cain's Jawbone?
This is a book that was published in 1934. It's a sort of whodunit mystery novel where there's 100 pages. None of them are in order. There's 6 murderers and 6 victims. And the goal of the book is to solve all 6 murders as well as put the 100 pages in order. This has only been solved, I think, 4 times since 1934.
So the book's about 100 years old. It's got 100 pages. And countless people have tried to solve it. But we think that we can do it.
Yeah.
Like we're pretty sure that we can do it.
Yeah.
Do you think that we can do both? Get all 6 murderers, the 6 victims, and the 100 pages? Or do you think like...
Well, so I'm curious what you think is going to be the harder part, because I think we've done quite a bit of work already. Mm-hmm. I think, for me personally, I think the 6 murders, the murderers and the victims, I think that's going to be easier. I don't know if we'll be able to get 100 pages in order.
Okay. Yeah, I'm thinking we can get at least the story out of it and figure out who did it.
Yeah.
But I don't know if we're going to get the 100 pages in the... I think that's the trickiest part.
So how we found out about this was I was perusing TikTok.
As one does.
In my leisure time, not on the clock, of course. And there was a woman who said, my toxic trait is I think that I could be the 5th person to solve Cain's Jawbone. And so I started looking into it. I proposed the idea to you, or just like what this book was about, and you jumped in right away.
Oh yeah, I love a good mystery.
And so I love mysteries, and yeah, I think we can do it. But I know she's posted progress updates as well, and she thinks she's got the 100 pages. She thinks that's the easy part. For her, the difficult part is the 6 mysteries.
Okay. All right. Yeah, there's a timeline to this, as far as like, because you can solve this and then win a prize. We're not in it to win the prize. We're in it to solve it, and it's gonna. But that takes some. That's a lot. That's a lot. I'm impressed.
Yeah. So when it first came out, there was a prize of $25.
Yeah.
For any person who could solve the 100 pages and 6 murders. And there was a husband and wife, I think, tag team duo.
Okay.
And they were the first 2 to solve it. I think there was a third one.
The third one was the trust. They had donated they gave to the trust, and the trust had to figure it out themselves. Like, they didn't give them the answer. They're like, here's the novel, and they were like, okay, we're gonna figure this out.
Because the book sort of went under the radar for a long time before it was rediscovered, and then they had to resolve it on their own. And then the 4th, I believe, was a comedian in 2019 who was really bored and just decided to go for it, and he got it right.
He got it right. He spent most of the time in quarantine doing it. Like when we were on lockdown, he solved it. Yeah. So yeah. What about how are you approaching it? Because you and I have different styles.
So my approach is to just start from page 1, building a sort of database of all the characters mentioned, all references made, and there are a lot of them. Places mentioned, sort of just getting page 1, getting a feel for where this takes place, who's involved, what's happening, breaking apart any cryptic clues, and just taking it 1 page at a time. And yours is quite a bit different.
Mine's different. I decided I was going to read all 100 pages first, not take a single note, not write anything down, just read it, just get a shape, the feel of the shape of it. Like I think I had said, it's like walking around the house before I go in it. I wanted to see what it looked like. And then start maybe like in the back of my head, let my subconscious kind of start putting things together. Going like, okay, this sounds like this narrator and this narrator. Because we've discovered that we don't think there's one narrator.
No.
We think that there's multiple narrators. And so I read all 100 pages, didn't make a lick of sense to me, like if I'm being honest. Like didn't make much sense to me. But now I'm going through page by page and I am just like searching everything.
Yeah.
And I think I'm only like 5 pages in of the searching part. Yeah. But yeah, it's we definitely came at it with different angles.
Yeah, so you went through 100 pages and now you're starting with sort of what my beginning approach was. And I'm like probably about 35, 40 pages in with my method of like, I literally have a database Excel sheet.
It's an impressive spreadsheet. I've looked over your shoulder and I'm like, that's a lot of information. I'm only using, the book provides you with little space down here to fill things out. And I'm like, okay, that's all the notes I'm taking.
Yeah, I mean, I do that as well in mine. I'm also highlighting things that I intend to Google, because I'm not always at my computer when I'm reading through it. So things to come back and double reference. So you read through the 100 pages. What, like, did any of it make sense? What was your takeaway?
I was able to put some characters together. I was able to figure out, okay, this character shows up a couple times, because we found there's one character already that you and I both are very much like, he's everywhere, and that's Henry.
That's Henry.
So I think it's also funny because there are people who are a lot further along than this, than we are, who are probably, if they watch this, they're going to be like, oh, you're in for a treat. But just going through the whole thing, I could tell, like, okay, there's places mentioned, there's people referred to multiple times, and so it's starting to help at least figure out, like, I can start grouping things.
Yeah.
But as far as, like, what's really happening, I don't know. Because one of the things about this is that he uses a lot of, like, the guy who invented this, wrote the book, he was a crossword setter.
Yeah.
So he uses a lot of crossword puzzle kind of clues where you're referred to by secondary names or by important dates or by historical characters or play on words. And so you're kind of left going, am I reading a page about somebody at a beach, or am I reading a page about somebody eating a sundae? Like, I don't know what is really happening.
Yeah, and he'll refer to, like, an entire dessert as orange.
Yeah.
And not the fruit, the color. I can imagine in going through each page, if I were just trying to make sense of it like I would a novel, it just wouldn't make a lick of sense.
Yeah.
So you alluded to, we've already made some discoveries, and we've connected on some ideas, one of them being that there's multiple narrators, another one being Henry. And if you've at all started on this book, Henry's like a pivotal character.
Yeah.
I think we made a joke the other day that this book and, like, solving it is like a roller coaster. Like, when we started, we were up here like,
yeah, we're like, we could do this.
Yeah.
we can totally do this.
And then it was like, oh my God, this is so different. Like, there's way too much to break through. We'll never get to the other side. And then we sort of started taking an upturn where we're like, okay, like, we can do this.
We can. Yeah. Hold on, I can put this together.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting. I think that's one of the things that's preventing, the most challenging, not preventing, but the most challenging thing is trying to think, is that it's a book that's 100 years old.
Yeah.
And it's written by an Englishman.
An Englishman. And that disconnect between British, like, puzzle setting and American, like, interpretation 100 years later is a big disconnect.
It's a huge disconnect. And it's really interesting because you and I obviously will have to go online to look up some stuff.
Yeah.
And the challenging thing there, again, is also that other people are going online. So as soon as you type in anything that's remotely kind of connected to Cain's Jawbone, you get other people talking about it. And so while we're not, like, we kind of made it where we're not really going to look at other people's notes. We want to try to get as far as we can without having to go like, nothing makes sense. Let me get some help from somebody else. But just looking it up, you learn a lot more. And it's kind of surprising, like, how much information is actually in the page. Like, at first, page doesn't make any sense, but then you start kind of like Googling, or you find a reference and you follow that thread. It kind of opens up the page a little bit more, and you're like, oh, okay, I can kind of see what he's talking about. And, like, he's bringing up a lot of literary characters. He's bringing up detective novelist from England, and so it's interesting because you start actually even starting to get a sense of history.
Yes. You start to build, like, a language of 1930s Britain where you're understanding, okay, he's talking about contemporaneous culture at the, maybe not Agatha Christie, but, like, Arthur Conan Doyle is a big part of, like, for sure, Scottish literature and British literature.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that we go back and forth on is, like, what was happening at the time. Like, did this happen already in 1934, or are we sort of giving ourselves a red herring?
Yeah, because I red herring myself. I forgot that I was like, okay, so World War II hasn't happened yet, as far as this narrator is concerned. Like, the Great War has happened, and they don't call it World War I, they call it the Great War. And somebody had made a reference to Fleming's tincture. And I was like, oh, Ian Fleming, a tincture is a drink. Ian Fleming wrote James Bond. James Bond's drink is a martini. It's like, they must be drinking a martini. And I go to look up James Bond, and he's written in 1958 or something. And I'm like, nope, James Bond is not the same as, like, it didn't happen in the same time. It's not contemporaneous to the novel.
And there's a lot of examples where he'll, refer to something by, like, its third abstract name, and you Google it, and, like, for example, one that comes off the top of my head is Emperor's Peg. And a peg is a unit of measure for a drink of alcohol in this case. But if you Google Emperor's Peg, it's not a specific amount. It's really just saying a large amount of drink. But if you Google Emperor's Peg, what comes up is Cain's Jawbone, people coming up with their own ideas and interpretations. And so, it's not like we aren't excited that other people are solving it, but we are, like, sort of trying to stick to our own.
We are sort of, and, like, you have to weed through it.
Yeah.
Because those will be the top results, and we have to kind of read through, be like, okay, hold on, let me get past page 1, page 2, and let me go look around. Wikipedia has been a big help as far as that, because it won't say things like, oh, this was included in Cain's Jawbone. So far, do we have any, like, suspicions or hard thoughts about what's going on?
Yeah, so this is, naturally we've come across a bit of Cain's Jawbone response and criticism, I guess you could say, but people just positing their own ideas accidentally. And one thing that I haven't seen anyone else say that you and I are pretty dead set on is quite a number of these characters and points of view are cats and or dogs.
Yes, that surprised me the most, because we were reading it and I don't know, maybe this is because we're 100 years later, and I'm thinking to myself, maybe people 100 years ago weren't that funny, but, like, I wasn't prepared to start thinking, is this told from the perspective of a dog?
Yeah.
So that has been, like, interesting.
Like there's characters by the name of Ravager. I mean, we've talked about Henry. One of the biggest things that I'm wrestling with and coming to an answer on is, are there multiple Henrys? Because I'm pretty sure at least one Henry, if there are multiple, is a cat. Yeah,
and we go back and forth. I remember I walked in and was like, "Is this a dog?" And they're like, "Is Henry a so I was just trying to figure out, like, it's been surprising.
Yeah, and that's another struggle with the book is I don't know. Obviously, he's an intelligent man, and he's good at creating a puzzle. I don't know how intelligent to take him, because he, either everything is intentional, not one thing is accidental, and there's layers on layers potentially, or maybe I just read it at face value, and at face value, there's, I think, unquestionably a good percentage of these characters are cats and dogs, but maybe it's like a hat on a hat type thing, and it's actually not a cat or a dog, but he's like creating a metaphor, and so yeah, I don't know. Like, we could be. That's the thing with this book. You never know if you're on the right path.
Yeah.
And if we're going down the path of cats and dogs, we may be way off target.
Yeah. Another thing that I've noticed is that there's a lot of referring to poetry, and the thing is, like, I also noticed there weren't a lot of quotation marks.
Yeah.
So we don't know if a character is speaking, what character is speaking, or if they're quoting something. But I think one of the other things, if you're going to undertake Cain's Jawbone, you're going to spend a lot of time reading poetry.
Yeah.
Because in my head, I'm like, this whole poem is important. And one of the ones I recently read was The Sleeper by Walt Whitman, and that's like a couple pages long. Another one as a reference, another Whitman reference is The Song of Myself. I'm like, I don't know if I have time to read all of The Song of Myself to get this one reference. So it can be almost like a glacial undertaking because you
Yeah.
don't know how much you're really getting into when you open this up.
Because I mean, these pages are small. The book itself is small, and the pages are broken up, and I'd say like 2/3 of it is the text. But any one page it could be 20 minutes of research or more. So yeah, I mean, but he also draws on a lot of the same sources for references, like poetry. Walt Whitman, he did translate a lot of, I believe it was Chinese poems. That was part of his job. So he's got a lot of poetic references. But he also has a lot of contemporaneous literature references, like Walt Whitman, Arthur Conan Doyle. I think there's some Agatha Christie in there.
There's G.K. Chesterton. And also, we think that the cover has hints.
Yeah.
Because I keep coming back to the cover and we keep looking at things, and there is a dog's tail, so we're like, it's got to be a dog tail. You're also going to have to learn a little bit about horticulturalism.
Yeah.
Because we think one character that is a gardener, at least.
Yeah.
So, it's layers. It's going to be things that are current at the time in the 1930s in England, but then also, as you were saying, he translated Arabian Nights was one of the things that he translated. So he could be pulling references from multiple different cultures across centuries.
Yeah. And all those references could be layers on layers.
Could be layers on, or they could just be like nothing.
Yeah, yeah. It could be red herring. You don't know.
Yeah.
So all right. So when I pitched this to you, how has it held up in terms of what you expected going in versus what you got?
Going in, I thought like it was going to have more. I was thinking along the lines of kind of a closed room, who did it? Like there's the typical murder mystery where it really was just like nobody had put the time in to organize the pages and stuff. But reading it, I'm like, oh no, like, there is much more going on.
Yeah,
it's a lot more dense than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, the reason that there's only been 4 people to solve it isn't necessarily because not many have tried. It's just a lot of work, and even if it is possible, like it's a daunting amount of effort for any one person to do.
Yeah.
Just for funsies.
And we're 2 people trying to do it.
Yeah.
So anything that has been useful to you while you've been doing this?
So I think the spreadsheet that I started, I think, has been helpful because you've been going through and you've said things, or you've drawn my eye to a certain page that maybe I haven't even gotten to yet, and you've said they use this word, and it can be a name, or it can be like a flower, like a jasmine. And I go, oh, wait a second, I've got this spreadsheet where jasmine is referenced in these contexts alongside these characters. Like just recently, I was able to put together a potential adultery, which could be a motivation for a murder, and the connection was just what we think is a cat being named after a person, and that person being William. And then later on, there's a reference to Will and Will's wife, and Will's wife cheating on Will with Ben, and it's layers on layers on layers. And if like just having the spreadsheet to be able to keep track of each layer and what characters are connected to which has I think been pretty helpful to start to like create a murder wall of sorts and connect red strings.
Yeah.
So
I started looking up like how crossword puzzles were done, especially the way they're done in England, because they're not done the same way as they are in America.
Okay.
Because it is a lot of the play on words and moving letters inside of another word based on a previous word. And so I've been looking at how crossword puzzles are done there, because if he's a big fan of crossword puzzles and he's using some of those techniques here in the book, then that's what I'm trying to start looking for when it comes to like character names or places. I'm like, okay, how can this be a play on words? How can this be a spoonerism or something that maybe he's obfuscating us, but how can I see through that? And so I've been looking up crossword puzzles.
Yeah, and I think so. One thing we haven't done yet. This book is sort of physically designed to be torn apart.
Right.
And I think one of the things that we haven't done yet is tear the book apart and sort of rip these pages out and start laying them out like puzzle pieces. And I think sort of like that, like he is creating a sort of like crossword puzzle-esque where this page and page 10 and page 80 both reference the same thing. And so once you start putting these pages together physically, you can sort of maybe
seeing it,
maybe narrow down, there's this many narrators, there's this many settings, and maybe start to create a timeline of sorts. So I think once we do that, maybe we'll see that it's easier to put the 100 pages in order, perhaps. But yeah, that's one thing that like there's so much to the process of solving this book that we haven't even gotten to yet.
That's actually my next step. Is I'm going to read. I read through it once, and now I'm going through with the notes. And then my third go through is I'm going to take it all apart and start using my notes to rearrange the pages.
Yeah, I'm sort of expecting that we'll get to a point where we're treating it like a literal puzzle, like puzzle pieces, and putting it together physically in that way. I don't know. There's so much to this book that I'm like excited about now. Like it's become a not insignificant amount of my like headspace.
Your headspace and your time is devoted to going. Let me check something real fast.
Are you like typically when you read are whodunits like? Do they have a hold on you? Like,
oh yeah, I'm a huge fan of whodunits and How Ketchums. Those are some of my favorite genres. Like I do like the urban fantasy stuff, but I've always loved the whodunits. I'm also a huge fan of like noir movies, the 1930 noir movies, and then of course I'm a huge fan of the Masterpiece Mystery series that happened, like Endeavor, Morse, Lewis, Grantchester, I think is another one. Those I'm like, yeah. So when you said it's a British mystery, that was another reason why I kind of jumped onto it, because I was like, oh, I love British mysteries.
Yeah.
Like I watch those on Masterpiece all the time.
For me, it was more about like, oh, my ego would benefit greatly if the two of us could get this done. If we were number 5 and 6 or what have you. But yeah, I mean, growing up, I grew up on like the Boxcar Children.
Okay.
And like, you know, Nancy Drew and stuff like that. Yeah, Hardy Boys, and a series of unfortunate events like the Baudelaire Children were amateur detectives. So I mean, I think just like even the nature of like being invested in reading is sort of like a practice in breaking something apart and like investigating like what does this mean, how is this connected, and stuff like that. So I don't know, I'm really invested in this book, and we haven't even, I don't know, like if you were to take this book and pretend that it's like an iceberg,
that's what I'm saying. Like,
what percentage do you think we're like through the iceberg?
Oh no, we're still above the water. Like we're still up there. Like I don't know if we've really plumbed the depths of it. So I think there's fathoms to go. Yeah,
and so you referenced it earlier, but there is a sort of like deadline of sorts with a prize attached to it, which I want to say is $250
American.
$250, yeah. And if you solve it, which means all 6 murderers and all 6 victims and all 100 pages in order, you get $250, which it's not a lot.
Yeah, but I mean, that's still nice.
But the ego of getting to say that you're one of the very select few who could do it is that's pretty cool. The deadline on it is December 31st of this year.
Yeah. So we have no hopes of like beating it by that time.
Yeah.
So for us, it really is going to be more like we're doing it because we are really interested in doing it.
Yeah.
Like it's just it alone. Having started it, I feel like I'm going to be dedicated to trying to figure it out. I don't want this to get the best of me.
Yeah, I don't want to stop short with this thing. I think it's like even more fun that we're doing it together, and I hope so. Since the girl that I mentioned that sort of like kick-started a new wave of interest in Cain's Jawbone, the book has sold quite a few copies since then. I think she made the TikTok in 2019 or 2020 or something like that. So there is like a sort of new wave of interest in the book, and we are starting a book club so that anyone who's listening along or maybe simultaneously invested in the book, you can come give us your thoughts, And
Yeah, we're going to be doing those on the 4th Thursday at our library, the Garcia Library in Corpus Christi, Texas. And that'll be at 7 o'clock. And I believe I'll be hosting that. But everybody's more than welcome to put comments below or suggestions or anything like that. But I think that's another thing is that 100 years ago, there wasn't the internet. And so it was kind of expected that the reader themselves would take it up and solve it.
Yeah.
But now we're kind of like, we're all connected now. So it's kind of almost going to be a group experiment and trying to get this all figured out.
Yeah. And I think it would be super interesting to have, like an entire group sort of breaking this apart and saying, I actually don't think it's a dog, or I don't think these points of views are from the perspective of a cat for these reasons. And I don't know, I do, that is one of the reasons that we've tried to stay away, I think, from like people who are solving it online. It is interesting to come at it from fresh ideas and doing your own work and not necessarily.
You want to earn it.
Yeah,
I think it's the information sticks with you longer if you earn it. If I take somebody's passing comment and then try to crack it myself using that comment, I wind up getting frustrated.
Yeah.
But if I've earned it, then it's more rewarding.
Yeah. One of my fears is that this book will be solved and the solution will be posted online, because that is.
I feel like that's like against the spirit, though. Like if you
is.
solve it, I feel like just say you solved it.
Yeah.
Don't give me the 100 pages in order. Don't tell me the 6 people.
Yeah.
But yeah, because I feel like that goes against the spirit of it.
Right. Yeah. I for sure think it does. But I don't know. I'm sort of torn between. I think it's so cool that there's this wave of interest and people are like, maybe collaboratively, but like at least distinctly working on this at the same time. But also like getting to work with it with you, I think has been also like super rewarding and like
it has, because like again, it goes back to you and I approaching it differently.
Yeah.
Like we're playing off of each other's notes. So we're playing off with each other's mindset, the way we think and approach things. So that is that is very rewarding.
Yeah.
I will have to probably say that our coworkers might think it's kind of annoying because we keep walking back into the room going, "Did you look at page 50?"
Yeah. we'll just be at our desks working and just dog.
Yeah, so that's at least that's funny for us. But yeah.
So okay, if you were to give an estimate on how long it would take for us to solve this, how long do you think?
I'm optimistic at 3 months. I think it's 3 months, just because having gone through it and seeing I want to project 3 months. If we do it before 3 months, I'll be over the moon.
Okay.
What about you?
I don't know. I think the pace that we've been working at, we've gotten a lot done in a short amount of time. But that may have been like the easiest ground to cover, so to speak. And
it does say it's not for the faint of heart, and that it's extremely difficult.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we're on this sort of roller coaster, and I think right now we're riding the upswing, and I don't think it would take much for us to like get the easy groundwork covered and then just be staring at a mountain that we have to climb and feel really daunted by.
And again, but I think that the 2-person system we have right now will help with that, because we will look at it differently. We might have different ideas and viewpoints on how to approach it, so that might get us a little further along.
Yeah, it's definitely been helpful for you to say like, you've just like made comments that I don't even know that you meant to like start me on a path of investigation, but just have another point of view to like keep the motivation going, I guess.
Yeah.
I think it would be a lot harder if we were doing it
separate. Yeah,
separately.
of course. Do you have any ideas of who, like, okay, so there's 6 murders and 6 victims. Do you have any hard or guesses yet so far?
So, like I mentioned with Will and his wife and her cheating on him with Ben, I guess that's motive right there.
Okay.
Possibly. That's not an uncommon motive in like a whodunit. So I don't. Sort of right now, I'm just sticking to a lot of like motive. there are also a lot of like references, like this could be the act of poisoning. There's a very early on, there's a guy who is holding orange, which our interpretation is that that's a dessert, and he's talking to a girl who's selling pastries or some sort of dessert, and she says, "Look, there's a boy falling in the river," and he turns and looks, doesn't see anything.
He's like, "What's that over there?"
And then he turns back around, and there's a hole in the pastry, but it's not said that way. It's said like in very abstract 1930s British, like there's a hole in the cumulus of the cloud, and so I think that's possibly a murder right there happening. But like, so none of the murders, or very few of them, are like Walter is dead. Like very few of them are like that.
Yeah, I think somebody gets pushed out of a window. That was one that I read. I was like, they got pushed out of a window. Or they got pushed down a well.
Yeah.
But I also think, and I think you have the same idea. I think some of the victims are murderers, and some of the murderers are victims. I think some people are on both sides of the aisle.
The only thing that's from my current reading, the only thing that's really a common thread is Henry.
Henry, yeah.
And that's why I sort of think that there are multiple Henrys, because this doesn't just take place in one location. There's references to London, there's references to France, Paris, France.
Yeah, and South Africa.
Yeah, Scotland, lots of Scotland.
America, we think one narrative is taking place in America.
Right, and not South America, but southern United States.
Yes.
And that's the horticulturalist potentially, because she references a flower that's only found in the southern United States. The other thing is there's a lot of Scottish references, and I think that's done with intention, because Scotland is sort of the home of mystery novels. Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes, Agatha Christie, Ian Rankin, which came much later. But Scotland is really like the birthplace of like the crime mystery, the sort of detective whodunit. So I think, I think there's a lot to learn there. Just looking back.
So I
through,
gotta
like,
brush up on my Scottish literature a bit more.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's so much like history that you have to learn just to like begin to crack this, but. It's such a fun journey, though, so far.
Yeah, and we'll be chronicling our journey together. We have aspirations that this will actually be covered in our notes and our progress as we go on.
Turn this into a murder wall.
Yeah, with the red string going. So, but yeah, we're excited to go through this. And we hope that you are too. We do have copies of this book available to look at over at the Garcia Library as well. And again, we invite you guys to leave comments. We invite you guys to come to the in-person session on the 4th Thursdays. Are we going to have it this month, or?
This one coincides with Christmas, or do we have?
We're talking to Shelby. She's our director. She's our unspoken third person of the podcast.
The third host.
We might not.
Okay, so we will get you the information, but at least this is like your starting episode to kind of get you, if you've never read the book, hopefully this will get you interested in picking it up and looking at it and following along with us, because we're going to have spoilers from here on out.
Yeah.
Right? I feel like we kind of tiptoed around some things.
Yeah.
After this, spoilers, just spoiler heavy, okay? So yeah, you can we do have copies available for you to check out, for you to look at. But also, again, leave your comments and come visit us on the 4th Thursdays.
Yeah.
So you excited?
Yeah, it's given me motivation to wake up.
And with that, we are Panic at the Library, and this is why we're not detectives.
Thank you for watching. If you want to come talk about the book in person, we'll be hosting a book club at the Garcia Public Library every 4th Thursday at 7 p.m. And we might have snacks.
It's a mystery.